Following a really impressive Welsh performance against an Australian team which largely didn't turn up, I'm going to be having a little look into some of the statistics behind the game. Now I find some of these really fascinating because I wouldn't say it necessarily tells the tale of the tape. Looking through some of these stats, I wouldn't necessarily say that you'd pick Wales to win by 40 points to 6. Some of the stats really do not reflect that, which is interesting considering it was an absolutely staggering scoreline, one in which I don't think many envisaged. I mean, a lot of people thought Wales would win, a lot of people thought Australia would win, but I don't think they thought that by that margin. I thought they would think it would be around sort of 5 points in it, 10 points in it max, but it didn't play out that way. So yeah, I'm going to go through some of the statistics as well as go through some of the key player statistics and the players in which top the charts in their respective positions. Let's start off with territory and possession first and foremost. Not a lot in it. Ultimately, Wales just edged both of them. Now, Australia had a decent amount of possession considering how dominated they were on the scoreboard. 54% to 46 in territory for Wales, and then 52 to 48% in territory for Wales as well. In possession, sorry, for Wales. So those statistics are relatively close. I think Wales opted to sit back a lot of the time and just let Australia play onto them because the Australians really weren't making, sort of, especially outside of the first sort of 25-30 minutes. After that point, Australia really weren't making inroads into that Welsh defence. Look, the Welsh had a couple shaky moments early on with Donaldson making a break, and the Aussies had a penalty advantage 5 metres out, but after that point the Welsh defence was absolutely watertight. Moving on to metres carried, the Australians edged this one, 295 metres to 254 of Wales. Now, a lot of these statistics are especially surprising because when you've made nearly 300 metres and you haven't scored a try, that either means your execution is really poor or the opposition's defence is outstanding. Now, I'd have to say it is a mixture of both. There was an opportunity where Australia, if they passed it right instead of left, they had an opportunity to score, but apart from that, the Welsh defence was just phenomenal. So, yeah, a lot of metres for ultimately not a lot of reward. The Welsh obviously started off the quicker of the two teams and clocked up quite a lot of metres through the legs of Gareth Davies going under the sticks within 120 seconds. So both teams had their moments, but ultimately Wales were just far more clinical of the two sides. Carries over the gain line, Australia just edged this one slightly. I thought Wales were impressive in this discipline as well. Australia edged Wales 47 carries over the gain line to 43. Now these are really important in terms of generating that momentum for your outside backs. Now look, it depends, because when you look at a statistic like that, you think the Aussies really almost dominated in attack. But when you look at it, how far over the gain line did they actually make it? Were the Welsh players, even though they got over the gain line less, were they getting further over the gain line? So these little nuances that we don't necessarily know, which paint a bigger picture. But looking at the hard and cold numbers as they are, the Australians edged that one as well. Defenders beaten is also in the Aussies' favour. 19 defenders beaten to 15. Now, the Aussies did look relatively dangerous in the outside channels with Karevi and Pataya, as well as Mark Nikitawase and Korobetti. Some really dangerous attackers. So they made a couple defenders beaten, but that Welsh drift defence, especially the scramble D from Wales, was just out of this world. So sort of the offloads inside and things like that, they just weren't able to get away because the Welsh were so committed, so fit. Their cardiovascular endurance just was incredible, so they just didn't stop. They were able to be so many places at once. It was quite remarkable. And then moving on to the next statistic, Wales concede the offload stats to Australia by 6-3. Look, offloads depends how and the context of the offload. If you're offloading behind a defence, which can lead to a line break, that's obviously worth its weight in gold. Whereas if you're just popping the ball off of the floor as an offload, you know, that stat doesn't almost irrelevant. So it'd be interesting to see the context of these offloads. But ultimately, Australia had to press the gamble button at some point. They were only going to lose this match, so they had to play from wide. And that ultimately means trying to get those offloads, really try and up the pace. So they did that late on, but ultimately the sort of spiteful edge and the ruthless edge just wasn't there. For Wales, conversely, that was definitely there. They had a lot of conviction in everything they did, and they if they set their heart on something, they were going to do it with everything they've got. Next statistic is kicks from hand. Wales kicked a lot more than Australia, 24-18. Now, Wales, as I said in my 5 keys to victory video, I think Wales would be more comfortable without the ball, and I felt that was the case. I felt Wales were really, really comfortable just absorbing Australian pressure. Now, the location on the pitch that they were absorbing Australian pressure was around the 10-metre line and a halfway line, which, look, if you're on your 22, for example, your 5 metre, look, that's not comfortable. But Wales, around the halfway line, seemed more than happy to just let Australia play and then secure turnovers, reap the rewards of an Australian error, a knock-on or a loose offload. And the Welsh sort of built upon the Australian mistakes as opposed to Wales creating their own positioning. So brilliant work from Wales, and ultimately, as much as the statistic potentially looks better in Australia's favour because they were running more, it's where you're running from. If Australia had kicked better and more, maybe they could find themselves in a better field position to launch attacks. Line-out percentages, look, this was incredible from Ryan Elias for Wales. Look, some world-class line-out darts in there. He was hitting Will Rowlands and Adam Beard for fun. Some really strong line-outs, 17 out of 18, which worked out at 94%. Now, the Aussie line-out wasn't perfect by any means, 78% completion, 7 line-outs out of a possible 9. So, look, clearly Wales has a lot more line-out ball. Look, Australia didn't kick it an awful lot, so potentially some of those line-outs were simply off of Australia running the ball out of play as opposed to kicking it out. And I feel like the line-out was a real big weapon for Wales. They got that driving maul going early on, which looked really, really strong. And some really good work from Wales in that respect. Penalties conceded. Now, look, this surprised me a little bit. I thought Australia conceded a lot more than a dozen penalties. Maybe it felt like more because they were compounding their errors so badly. We always talk about compound errors being so much worse than a normal error. It's where you do one error followed by another, followed by another. Now, this is called piggybacking up the pitch. I don't know if you've heard that phrase, you probably have. You just give the opposition just so much opportunity to exit their 22 and then get them another reward via your own error, which lets them into your 22 or 3 points. So Australia did a lot of this. They would drop the ball, for example, then give away a scrum penalty, then from the consequential line out, they'd then give another penalty, and Wales would just go from positive to positive, which really hurt Australia. But ultimately, there was only 3 more penalties conceded from Australia to Wales, so maybe I'm reading into that statistic a little bit too much. Tackles made, 141 of Wales and 124 of Australia. That almost leans back to what I'm saying about Wales being almost happy to let Australia play and just make their tackles. I mean, Jack Morgan got through a heap of tackles. I've got the number just down here. What was it? 17 tackles it says that Jack Morgan made. Ridiculous. Absolutely incredible work rate. In my previous video, I was banging the drum of Caelan Doris. I think he made 12 or 13 tackles. Jack Morgan took this to a completely different level in this game. Phenomenal from him. So that 141 tackles of Wales to 124 of Australia. Australia had to do their fair share of tackling, but ultimately it was where they were tackling. A lot of the Australian defence had to happen inside their own 22, as opposed to the majority of Wales' defence happening just around the halfway, as comfortable as they could possibly be. Tackle completion, success rate, that surprises me. Australia actually win that one as well, 84% to 81. I'm not sure quite how that's happened. Let me know what you think of that one. I would have thought Wales' tackle completion was much higher, but potentially as Wales were further up the pitch, the cost of missing a tackle wasn't that much because they could just cover each other. And the Australian missed tackles might have been near their own line, which is obviously far more costly. And then moving into turnovers, this is probably one of the only stats that Wales have won, apart from, line out and penalties conceded. Wales won 4 turnovers to Australia's 3. The Welsh looked really strong over the ball, and potentially they didn't even need to make that many turnovers at ruck time, because before they even needed to compete, the Australians would make a handling error or concede a penalty. So good work from Jack Morgan over the ball, and a lot of that Welsh back row have really stepped up. Look, I thought they'd feel the weight of missing the likes of Justin Tipperick and Alwyn Jones, but they've got plenty of quality players, and Jack Morgan's just evolving into such a talented rugby player. So speaking of talented rugby players, I'm just going to go through a few of the key statistics from a few of the players. I've only got 4 players here, so not much longer left of hearing my voice in this video. Gareth Anscombe, 23 points. Now, for a replacement, I know Dambiger came off early, but what an impact he's made to Welsh rugby, and especially in this game. 23 points, including a drop goal, conversions, penalties. He almost got the full house with the amount of scoring methods he utilised. Really, really good performance from Anscombe. He missed a couple off the tee, I think, but look, off the tee he's really, really dangerous, and as soon as he missed his first one, you just knew the second one was going over. He's not a player that makes many mistakes, and yeah, very professional and a real solid replacement to Dan Biggar. Jack Morgan, as I mentioned, 17 tackles, just unreal. 17 tackles is it's just phenomenal, and the fact that he does this week in, week out, I don't know how his body stands up to it, to be honest, because he puts himself through the ringer. Absolutely phenomenal. Wears his heart on his sleeve and puts his body on the line every single match. Now, the most meters made was actually made by an Australian, Andrew Kellaway. Now, look, the reason for this was probably the amount of kicks that the Welsh were doing. Kicks from hand, 24, so he had a lot of kick return, allowing him to eat up easy meters. Now, I don't think he made a clean break off of these meters, so look, it wasn't awfully costly to Wales, and yeah, as I said, they look comfortable defending. The last statistic I'm looking at is the number of carries over the gain line, and this was won by George North with 8 carries over the gain line. Now, look, George North moving back into the from wing to centre. He's looked really, really strong. Some brilliant ball carrying in there, and yeah, he's a really sort of thick set, muscly, heavy centre, and he uses that to his best effect. He's got some really good feet, which he's obviously learnt from being a winger, and he's moved that into the 13 jersey. And yeah, when he gets going, he's a real tough player to stop. And yeah, I've seen him really step up in quite a few important matches now for Wales. Him and Tompkins loved that little tip pass onto George North, and a lot of defenders just can't mark him because he's just so powerful, and he manages to just change his direction just at the line. And yeah, Wales have got a real nice centre combination in there. Potentially Tompkins can struggle a little bit defensively at times against big centres, but when it comes to going forward and handling, Tompkins and North link up really, really well. So yeah, that's enough of me talking. That was an unbelievable game, and Wales completely just ran all over Australia in the end. One of their best results, I think, in Rugby World Cup history. And you know, as soon as there's a winner, there has to be a loser, unfortunately. And look, it's going to leave a sour taste in Australians' mouths, but that's sport, and I'm sure they'll come again. But yeah, leave your comments in the comment section down below. What do you think of the statistics? Any that surprised you particularly? And yeah, thank you very much for watching.